Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I'm back home where it's a little cooler, so I'm able to put my jacket on. As you see, I came back with some gifts. Thank you, Mark, for the Avery hoodie. Thank you very much, Dassey, for the Vancouver t-shirt. What a great time we had. My head is full of memories and thoughts following our little tour down under, and I'm sure that over the coming weeks, months, even years, we will continue to talk about the happenings down on the other side of the world. Now, for me, my first exposure to police, my first dealings with police came when I was about 12, 13 years old. A very famous policeman from, certainly in terms of being in Gloucestershire, former rugby player for England, John Fiddler, was our cycling proficiency instructor. One of these people who you did not answer back to, you had huge respect for, and if you treated him respectfully, well, you actually got to enjoy some respect back from him. That was my first encounter with, as I say, with a policeman, and it generated and continues to generate huge respect for police throughout the world, in fact. It's funny that I never thought 40 years later that I would be going down to Australia as, for want of a better word, a civil rights activist. What could possibly have caused me, a mere musician in the border, to become a civil rights activist? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. My anger at Manitowoc Sheriff's Department for insulting the law enforcement profession throughout the world. Behaviour such as theirs is very damaging. It destroys respect for the police. It changes the public's opinion of the police. It's a terrible thing. Here in the UK, certainly for me, my first exposure to a legal case in America was, of course, the O.J. Simpson case. It was kind of forced upon us, nightly reports on the news, and of course clearly the evidence shows that in actual fact O.J. Simpson was guilty of the murder of his wife. Whether the LA Police Department deserved a conviction is a different matter. Clearly there were some on the jury who considered it a political statement to find O.J. Simpson not guilty and to, in effect, put one or two fingers up at law enforcement in LA. Of course, the dichotomy between the O.J. Simpson case, where there is so much evidence against him and he's found not guilty, compared with the 85 conviction of Stephen Avery, where, of course, there is no evidence against him, and yet he is found guilty, is quite remarkable. For anybody that's watched Making a Murderer, the 85 conviction was appalling. Well, I say everybody. My good friend Robert Herman once described it to me as unfortunate. I suspect he wasn't referring to Stephen Avery when he mentioned the word unfortunate. Since February 16, when I watched it, I've learned a lot about the legal system over there in the States. I must admit that whilst watching Making a Murderer, for me to think that the trial in 2007 would be fairer Well, after having seen the 85 trial, how could I be so naive? We often say, don't we, that, had the trial taken place elsewhere, in front of a proper jury, in front of a proper judge, and with the proper evidence, then the case would have been different. But I would suggest that, in fact, had the case been somewhere else, there would not have been a trial in the first place. Certainly not of Steve and Brendan. Interestingly, the blood in the RAV4 reminds us of the O.J. Simpson case, where, of course, in the O.J. Simpson case, the blood is exactly where you would expect to find it. The blood from O.J.'s hands, because of obviously his attacks on his wife and her boyfriend. He was covered in blood, and we see exactly where somebody bleeding because of the blood on the hands leaves blood. None of that in the RAV4. Clearly planted, and clearly Kathleen Zellner has the best experts in the world that will come and testify that the blood was planted. Of course, the question is not whether the blood was planted. Clearly it was planted. Where did the blood come from? What was the source of the blood? Could it have been the vial? Well, could have been. Unfortunately, there isn't enough for KZ. I'll refer to her from now on as KZ in respect to my American friends, because that's what they all call her, so no more KZ. I'll just go with KZ. Okay, dude, you'll be happy about that. There was not enough blood for KZ to test. Of course, Dean and Jerry were very much hamstrung by the Denny restriction. They could only go with the police framing defence. And that's, of course, why they focused so much on the blood vial. But things have changed. KZ now has a Denny suspect, Bobby. And now KZ is doing the investigation that Bert and Ernie should have. Well, I say that Bert and Ernie should have done. We are not surprised, of course, to find out that Bert and Ernie themselves, the investigators, are also involved in the framing. The computer CD and 90 times more DNA on the bonnet catch. Still guilters question the blood in the RAV4. They say, well, if it's Stephen Avery's blood, he must have put it there. I find that quite ludicrous and ridiculous, and would ask, have you ever heard of planting or framing? David Rudolph, during his presentations on both evenings, referred to the analogy of, you go to bed one night, it snows, you wake up in the morning, there's snow on the ground, clearly it snowed. But you don't know, you didn't see it yourself, but you don't know what time the snow came down, whether it came down in a big flurry or gradually. In this case, yes, there's blood in the RAV4. How did it get there? It certainly didn't get there by Stephen Avery having a cut on his finger and driving the car. It didn't happen that way. Absolutely not. That's it. We don't know who planted the blood in the RAV4 yet. We don't know where the blood came from, whether it came from the vial or from the blood in the sink. We don't know because of the vial. We don't know whether it came from the vial because there simply wasn't enough for KZ to test. The expert said, we cannot date that blood because we simply don't know. We will not have enough of it. The science at the moment is not that advanced. Who knows? At some point in the future, maybe that blood could be tested and exactly dated. We see all the time how science is advancing constantly. So anyway, as I say, I thoroughly enjoyed Australia. Some great memories, which obviously will get shared. Beginning, I believe, this weekend. The plan is for the four of us to get together for a live chat, which will be, I believe, my time around about 9 o'clock in the evening, which will be, because Mark is 11 hours ahead, he's having to get up early, 8 o'clock, which is very kind of you, Mark, yes, and it means that the dude and Stacey, I believe it's sort of early to mid-afternoon on the Saturday for them. So, yeah, Mark Sunday morning, myself Saturday evening, the dude and Stacey Saturday afternoon. I think I've got that right. I'm sure I have. Anyway, as I say, looking forward to sharing lots of thoughts, both about the presentations, one or two thoughts about the presentations, one or two things that piqued my interest, one or two things that weren't said that maybe should have. Who knows? Certainly great fun to be with Mark, whom I'd met before. I knew exactly what he was like. Spent a day together. Stacey, I'd never met before, chatted with. Wonderful fella. Very, very deep thinker. Huge knowledge of the case. Just a really, really nice guy. What can I say about Eric? He's just one of these people who are larger than life character. When he enters the room, he literally fills that room. Yep, he's American. Yep, he ticks that box. He's loud. Yes, he ticks that box. He can be a bit crass at times. Yes, he can tick that box. But if there were more Eric Joses in this world, it would be a much better place. So anyway, hopefully we'll get a wee chat going Saturday night, and hopefully catch some of you there, and we'll talk a bit more about well, particularly obviously the presentations, and one or two thoughts about our time in Australia. Anyway, that's all I've got time for just now. Catch you again soon. Bye for now.